Discover how God miraculously transforms your family dynamics. 7 sacred ways to expose hidden love. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the sun shone fiercely upon the arid land of Canaan, where Jacob, the patriarch, had settled with his family. Among his 12 sons, Joseph stood out, adorned in a beautifully ornamented robe given to him by his father, an explicit mark of Jacob's favor. The scent of sheep surrounded him as he walked among the family shepherds who tended their flocks. Laughter once echoed among the brothers, but now it faded under the weight of jealousy. Joseph often recounted his dream of ruling over them, a vision that sparked bitter envy in their hearts. His brothers, who once labored side by side under the gentle grace of their father, grew increasingly resentful of the love Joseph received. Their hearts clashed like a storm, each shrouded in dark thoughts as they grinded the grains of their discontent. "Behold, here comes the dreamer," they mocked as Joseph approached them in the fields delivering food. In secret they conspired, casting glances filled with malice. When Joseph arrived, a harsh wind swirled as his brothers seized him, dragging him away, while their laughter turned to cold silence. They cast him into a dark, dry pit, leaving him to grapple with fear and bitterness as they sat nearby, feasting without a shred of remorse. Days turned into nights, and Joseph's fate shifted dramatically as he was sold into slavery for silver, bound for Egypt, the land of his uncertainty. In Potiphar's house, the officer of Pharaoh, Joseph served with unwavering faith in Yahweh, whose promise whispered to him amidst despair. Dreams of authority and familial restoration lingered in Joseph's heart, intertwining with his longing for freedom. Divine purpose became clearer when he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, revealing a forthcoming famine. 7 years of plenty will yield to 7 years of famine, Joseph declared. Entrusted with immense power, he managed Egypt's grain reserves, a steward of salvation during dire times. Meanwhile, in Canaan, Jacob and his family, grappling with the drought, felt the sting of desperation. Suffering nurtured a heavy guilt within Joseph's brothers as they journeyed to Egypt, blind to the resolution God held. In the bustling marketplace, Joseph gazed upon the faces of his brothers, unrecognizable yet familiar, and a flood of memories rushed through him, the laughter, the betrayal, the longing for reconciliation. His heart wrestled with the threads of justice and compassion, igniting a fierce internal battle. "You are spies," he accused them, his voice gripping with authority and pain. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's Word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's Word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As Joseph glimpsed their remorse, he pondered how to reveal his true identity. Memories of betrayal and the echoing cries of love from his father surged within him like a tempest. What ensued in the shadows of our family can yield light and restoration, he thought, torn between sorrow and mercy. In the very depths of betrayal, Joseph realized that mercy could indeed heal the deepest wounds. Waiting for the opportune moment to dissolve the barriers, speaking the language of love amidst shadows. The beautiful tapestry of God's divine plan was beginning to weave together, unveiling a promise that could transform shattered family dynamics. Would the hidden love emerge and change the course of their story forever? And Joseph, cloaked in the garb of authority, felt the weight of his brother's guilt and sorrow strike his heart like thunder. The air around him thickened with the tension of unspoken words and unresolved conflict. With a measured gaze, he observed their despair, each pleading for the mercy that had once seemed so distant. "Ah, you deceive yourselves," he continued, piercing through their defenses. "You have come to see the nakedness of the land, to spy upon it." The brothers' faces fell in disbelief, and their spirits quaked at the judgment they felt from one they had wronged so deeply. "Sir," they implored, gathering their courage, "we are all sons of one man. Your servants are 12 brothers. We came to buy food. We are not spies." Their voices trembled, for they believed the wrath of the Egyptian official could cast them into utter ruin. Then Joseph's mind raced back to the fateful day of betrayal. He struggled to contain the torrent of emotions, the cries of his brothers entering the pit echoing in his ears. With each moment he saw their desperation, his heart divided between past wounds and a yearning for reconciliation. It would be unwise, he thought, to reveal myself all at once. I must discern their hearts. "A test I will provide," Joseph decreed, firm yet pained. "One of you shall return and bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are honest men." His words were spoken with authority, but it was the ache behind them that conveyed a deeper intent. As they returned to their encampment that evening, Joseph's brothers conferred in hushed tones, their voices heavy with guilt. "We are being punished for what we did to our brother," Judah lamented, recalling their betrayal. "We saw his anguish and did not listen. Now the blood of our guilt weighs down our lives." But Reuben, ever the eldest, retorted, "Did I not speak against the wrong we did? No matter, our fate is sealed." Then Joseph's mind raced back to the fateful day of betrayal. He struggled to contain the torrent of emotions, the cries of his brothers entering the pit echoing in his ears. With each moment he saw their desperation, his heart divided between past wounds and a yearning for reconciliation. "It would be unwise," he thought, "to reveal myself all at once. I must discern their hearts." "A test I will provide," Joseph decreed, firm yet pained. "One of you shall return and bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are honest men." His words were spoken with authority, but it was the ache behind them that conveyed a deeper intent. As they returned to their encampment that evening, Joseph's brothers conferred in hushed tones, their voices heavy with guilt. "We are being punished for what we did to our brother," Judah lamented, recalling their betrayal. "We saw his anguish and did not listen. Now the blood of our guilt weighs down our lives." But Reuben, ever the eldest, retorted, "Did I not speak against the wrong we did? No matter, our fate is sealed." Back in Egypt, Joseph overheard their lamentations, and in the depths of his heart, the seeds of forgiveness began to sprout. It was a tumultuous journey, resisting the desire to reveal his true self, while grappling with the overwhelming flood of memories. Would he be able to show them the grace that they did not know they needed? Days passed, and still the brothers wandered the land filled with dread. Faced with hunger and the shadows of their past, they returned to Joseph's court, this time with their youngest brother, Benjamin, in tow. The beloved son of Rachel. How his very presence would stir the memories buried deep within Joseph. As they entered the hall, Joseph's heart raced with a profound mix of excitement and trepidation. The moment of truth had arrived. Would their hearts reveal a transformation wrought by suffering? Would they embrace the love he longed to reveal? For Joseph saw Benjamin and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke?" The sight of the lad echoed out all the love he had lost, causing tears to swell in his eyes. He turned away, unwilling to unveil his identity in that instant, feeling the weight of both joy and sorrow envelop him in a divine tightrope. God's design was unfolding, bit by bit, whispering of a reunion intended not only for the physical, but also for the restoration of a heart torn from its roots. All beings received breath in that moment. A sacred silence echoed through the hall, thick with unresolved tension and the promise of divine healing. But as the day waned and the realities of the past loomed ever nearer before him, Joseph stood at a crossroad. Could the bitterness yield to forgiveness? He silently prayed. The answer remained veiled, hanging in the air heavy with a holy suspense. As the candles flickered and hearts huddled in worry, God's sovereign plan awaited its revealing. Would they recognize that in the void of familial love, God's network of mercy prevailed? Would the tapestry of restoration start to unfold, revealing that divine love could transcend all betrayals? The answer lingered in the air like the sweetest aroma of hope. And Joseph's heart wrestled within him, for he beheld the unfathomable depth of his brother's anguish. Each familiar face wore the marks of sorrow, each soul aching with memories of their past misdeeds. The weight of love and pain collided, and Joseph found himself in a tempest of emotions. He longed to embrace them, yet was burdened by the enormity of what had transpired. As the brothers stood before him, their gazes darting from Joseph's stern countenance to the floor, he commanded the steward of his house, "Fill their sacks with grain, and put each man's money back into his sack, and give them provisions for the journey." The steward complied, yet Joseph concealed the embrace of his true identity behind the veil of authority. As they departed for Canaan, a sense of dread awaited them, mingled with the uncertainty that the flood of Joseph's decisions might bring forth. They stopped to break their fast, and amidst the gathering gloom, they opened their sacks to reveal the unexpected sight. Their money returned, causing their hearts to sink further. "What is this that God has done to us?" they questioned in trembling voices, for they thought surely their sins against Joseph had come back to haunt them. Arriving at their father Jacob's tent, dread unfolded like a dark cloud. They recounted to him all that had transpired in Egypt, the harsh words, the authority of the man, and Benjamin's summons. Jacob's spirit was crushed under the news, reminding them of the son he mourned. "You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and now you would take Benjamin? All these things are against me." His lament resonated like a lamentation, the cherished fabric of their family fraying at the seams. Yet Judah, filled with a resolve born of remorse, stepped forward. "My father, let me take Benjamin into Egypt. I will ensure his safety, for I cannot let Benjamin perish so as to meet our brother's demands. Should I fail, let my life be forfeit." This solemn pledge stirred something deep within Jacob's heart as he wrestled with the unyielding tug of destiny. As they embarked on their journey once more, Joseph lifted his eyes to the heavens, whispering prayers for his brothers' hearts to be softened, for the seeds of restitution to take root. His thoughts turned toward what lay ahead, uncertain yet trembling with hope. Would they recognize the grace he wished to share? Would they seek forgiveness as he sought reconciliation? Days passed until they stood again at the threshold of Joseph's presence. The hall was ripe with anticipation as he commanded a feast to be prepared for them, a gesture laden with familial warmth that tested their resolve. As they looked upon the bounty of food and the fine garments bestowed upon them, wonder ignited in their hearts. When Joseph appeared, adorned in his princely robes, his eyes were aflame with the longing for belonging. "Is your father well?" he asked, his voice a soft echo of what it once had been, shifting as a gentle breeze through the hall of grain and silence. The brothers, not yet privy to the truth of Joseph's heart, bowed low, stammering in fear of meeting his gaze. They could not fathom the weight of the unspoken words, nor the divine narrative unfolding before them. Then Joseph could bear no longer the depth of love mixed with anguish, and turning away, he wept. The tears spilled forth like torrents, cleansing the bitterness held too long in his heart. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? The words erupted in urgency, laden with the weight of unbroken time. In that moment, the air was thick with divine purpose, and the brothers, struck dumb in disbelief, trembled. The path to reconciliation stretched before them, illuminated by the light of God's unfailing mercy. Would they now see that the painful past had paved the way to a glorious future? Would they understand that God had orchestrated these events to bind their hearts anew, revealing that His sovereign plan was at work even in their darkest hour? The echoes of a promise yet to unfold lingered, sealing their fate within the embrace of grace. And the breath of silence hung heavy in the air as the reality of Joseph's identity crashed upon his brothers like waves upon a troubled shore. Fear gripped them as a code upon their hearts, paralyzed in astonishment. They exchanged glances that spoke volumes, words faltering in the presence of their long-lost brother, who now stood before them as the second in command of all Egypt. Joseph advanced, his heart pounding with compassion. "Come near to me, I pray you," he called, the warmth of his invitation defying their frozen state. They approached, hearts throbbing, and at last he spoke. "I am your brother Joseph, whom ye sold into Egypt." The admission hung in the air like a haunting echo, unraveling the tightly bound threads of their despair. But instead of wrath, Joseph's eyes shone with mercy. "Be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life." With those words, he proclaimed an astounding truth, revealing the divine hand that had arranged their paths through the trials of betrayal and sorrow. "For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest." His brothers fell to their knees in reverence, overwhelmed with the gift of grace bestowed upon them. Joseph, perceiving their torment, sought to comfort them, saying, "And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Judah, trembling and emboldened, finally found his voice amidst the emotional tumult. "Joseph, it is true, we have sinned. We were blinded by envy, driven by our darkness." The admission swept through the air, a balm to the years of estrangement, igniting a flicker of hope. "Fear not," Joseph replied, "for I bear no ill will. See, your hearts are heavy, and you have come to understand the weight of your actions." With those gentle words, he summoned all the riches of compassion, binding their hearts anew, weaving a tapestry of forgiveness that threaded through the remnants of their once fallen family. Then Joseph proclaimed, "Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not." He instructed them to bring their father and all their kin, assuring them of the abundance set before them. "Thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children and thy children's children." With each pronouncement, the power of reconciliation washed over them, reminiscent of the floodwaters that cleansed the earth in days of old. As his brothers departed to share the wondrous news, Joseph looked upward, raising his hands to the Almighty. "For all things work together for good to them that love God," he declared, weaving the threads of divine purpose into the fabric of their lives. And at that moment, the very essence of God's sovereign plan began to unfold, hinting at a greater mystery yet to come. For the echoes of a covenant stretched across generations, a promise that would echo through the ages, reminding all that God would use their journey not just for their family's preservation, but for a greater destiny yet unseen. What would the next chapter of their divinely orchestrated lives reveal? The promise loomed, whispering of hope amidst the storm, beckoning them toward the horizon of God's unfathomable grace. And Joseph returned to his chambers, filled with wonder as he awaited the arrival of his family. His heart was a torrent of emotions, love, anticipation, and a yearning for restoration. He pondered the journey that had led him to this moment, where betrayal had been transformed into blessing, and strife turned into unity. Meanwhile, his brothers hastened back to Canaan, their feet swift upon the soil, eager to tell their father Jacob of the miraculous revelation. As they approached their father's tent, a tremor of excitement coursed through their veins, for they held in their hearts the weighty burden of the truth they had to share. "Father," they exclaimed, breathless and wide-eyed, "Joseph is alive! He is Lord over all the land of Egypt!" But Jacob's heart was numb with grief, clouded by years of mourning, and he could scarcely grasp the words spoken to him. "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die." His voice trembled, lifting from despair toward a renewed hope, a light breaking through the shadowy veil of sorrow. In the days that followed, Joseph prepared for their arrival, commanding that chariots be sent from Pharaoh's house to bring his family across the land. "Lay upon them the treasures of Egypt," he instructed, "for my father shall be honored as a prince among men." As Jacob set forth, led by the chariot of the king, a mingling of hope and anxiety filled his heart. He feared that the years had changed his son beyond recognition, yet he clung to the promise of reunion. The long journey was a testament to God's mercy, and he sought to rejuvenate his weary spirit by invoking the covenant made with his forefathers. When at last they met, as Joseph approached his father, he could hardly contain himself. "My father! My father!" He fell upon Jacob's neck, weeping tears of joy. Jacob, aged and frail, wrapped his arms around his long-lost son, and the moment struck the very heavens with their cries of redemption. Seeing their embrace stoked the flames of reconciliation among his brothers. The burden of guilt they had carried for years melted in the light of this reunion, and gratitude enveloped them as they beheld the fulfillment of dreams once thought buried in the desolation of their past. "God hath made me fruitful," Joseph declared to his family, "and he hath preserved your lives that we may not perish." His words echoed through the night air, a testimony to God's unfathomable designs. And they marveled at the power of forgiveness. Through the trials, God's hand had orchestrated a glorious conclusion, weaving together hearts and destinies. As days lengthened into weeks, the children of Jacob flourished in the land of Goshen. Jacob's family found solace and sustenance in the abundance of Egypt, yet they remained ever mindful of their lineage's promise. Joseph, ever discerning, sensed the stirring of a greater purpose, discerning within him the divine intentions of the Almighty, hinting at a holy heritage yet uncovered. "Remember," Joseph echoed to his brothers, "God's plans stretch far beyond our understanding. When the time of gathering has come, my bones shall be carried back to the land promised to our forefathers." And with that, a divine mystery simmered in the hearts of men, a revelation still hidden, binding together promises yet to unfold. Who among them could know what the Lord was preparing for the generations that would follow? What dreams lay encapsulated within the hearts of the children, prepared to emerge? For the saga of the sons of Jacob was just beginning, the threads of their lives intricately woven into the grand tapestry of God's eternal covenant. And it came to pass that when Jacob and his family settled in the land of Goshen, the days were filled with joy, yet shadows of uncertainty still lingered in their hearts. For God's promise spoke of a great nation to come, and in this prosperous land they questioned what God's true intentions were. Now Jacob, old and weary, gathered his children around him, calling forth his sons. "Hear to me, O sons of Jacob. Gather that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. His voice carried authority, a solemnity that gripped their hearts, and they listened closely, knowing that his words were wrapped in the wisdom of their forefathers. As Jacob spoke, he began with Reuben, his firstborn, saying, "Thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength." Yet he declared, "Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, for they knew that the blessings of the Father were both a birthright and a responsibility. Next, he addressed Simeon and Levi, declaring, "Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret." Each utterance was like a thread weaving a destiny, and they stood silent, pondering the consequences of their past actions and the gravity of the blessings or curses they might inherit. Then came Judah, of whom Jacob exclaimed, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come." These were words prophetic, resonating with divinity, foretelling the lineage through which the king would reign. They marveled, caught in the divine foresight that spoke of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And as Jacob blessed each son, their hearts were stirred with a mix of hope and dread. For he foretold of their wanderings and suffering, yet always with the assurance of God's faithfulness. "You shall become a multitude in the land. The Lord shall remember his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and me." In that gathering, Joseph stood among his brethren, recalling the dreams of his youth that had foreseen this very moment. Yet unknown to them were the trials yet to come. His eyes shimmered with understanding as he reflected on the wisdom of God, knitting together every sorrow and joy according to his will. "Fear not, for God is with us," he spoke to his family, emboldened by the truth he knew to be real. What the enemy meant for evil, God has turned for good. And even as the winds of change began to stir, Joseph remained a steadfast anchor, his heart being a lighthouse of hope amidst uncertainty. But as the twilight of Jacob's days drew near, little did they know that a violent storm was brewing on the horizon. The heart of Egypt would turn against them, and a king would rise who knew not Joseph, and with that darkness would come oppression. Yet, amidst the impending trials, God's plan continued to unfold, intricately woven through every event like a tapestry of faith. For even as the children of Israel multiplied in the land of Goshen, a great purpose rested upon their heads, one that would solidify their identity and call them to the promise so long laid before. As the family gathered to hear Jacob's final words, a profound mystery lingered in the air, a thread of hope entwined with the promise of deliverance. Would they endure the fire that was yet to come? Only the Lord knew the depth of his intentions. For upon the horizon, the light of liberation awaited to dawn, and a deliverer would arise, one who would bring forth freedom from bondage, echoing the heart of God's sovereign plan. And it came to pass that Jacob, having completed his blessings, lay back on his bed, his eyes closed, surrendering to the fatigue of his long and arduous life. His sons, having received their words, exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. For the air was thick with the weight of prophecy, and the quiet murmurs of God's future resonated within their hearts. Each son contemplated the fate that awaited them and their descendants, as dreams intertwined with fear. In the days that followed, the sons of Jacob went forth to establish their families in Goshen, nurturing their flocks and tending to the fruitful land. Yet, as time passed, their numbers increased greatly, and the promise made to their forefathers began to take shape. The land of Goshen flourished under their care, a testament to the faithfulness of God to his covenant. But as the new king arose in Egypt, one who knew not Joseph, the tide changed swiftly. The people of Israel found themselves under the shadow of oppression, their once peaceful existence now marred by fear. The king spoke to his people, saying, "Behold, the children of Israel are more and mightier than we." Thus the decree was set forth to afflict them with burdens, to oppress them with labor in brick and mortar, and to keep them low under heavy yokes. Under such a harsh rule, the hearts of the Israelites grew heavy, for the labor was relentless, and the cries of their souls ascended like incense unto heaven. Jacob's children, now founding a multitude, felt the sting of captivity encroaching upon their lives. They remembered the promises of their father and the oath of Yahweh, and yet they struggled to see how deliverance could come in such dire times. Even amidst their trials, one son of Jacob stood firm in faith. Joseph too had endured darkness, and he understood the depths of suffering and the glimmering hope that lay beyond. "Let us not forget," he called to his brothers, "the Lord has not forgotten us. His promises are unbreakable, and he will bring forth a deliverer." His voice was a beacon, urging them to look beyond their chains, reminding them of the strength of their forefather Abraham's covenant and the eternal faithfulness of their God. Yet the burdens grew heavier, and with every lash of the taskmasters, their spirit waned. Mothers wept for their children, children who bore the weight of their people's anguish. Hope flickered dimly, like a candle about to be snuffed out by the winds of despair. Yet, even there, in the dark, a divine spark ignited unseen, for God was working. In the stillness of night, mothers whispered prayers over their infants, pleading for mercy and protection. Among them was a woman named Jochebed, who bore a son, beautiful and perfect in her sight. With faith that radiated from her heart, she wove a basket of bulrushes, placing her baby within, hiding him from the decree of death. This act of defiance sparked a fire of destiny, for little did she know that this child would become the instrument of their liberation. As the grievous days lingered on, the echoes of bondage reverberated through the land of Egypt, while above the heavens remained silent, watching intently. Yet, unbeknownst to all, the hand of God was preparing a deliverer, a man who would rise up to lead them from the valley of despair and into the light of his promises.
And so, in the depth of sorrow, a tapestry of hope began to weave, connecting the cries of the oppressed to the heart of the Almighty. For in every trial there abided a purpose, and through the darkest nights come the most brilliant dawns. Would they trust in the divine purpose yet to be revealed? For in the face of despair, God was setting the stage for an exodus, and a strange deliverance was on the horizon, one even Jacob could not yet perceive. What was God devising in the hearts of his people, and how would he bring forth the promised freedom through the lineage of Judah? The dawn of revelation awaited, and divine deliverance was drawing near. And it happened in those days of sorrow, as the shadow of oppression loomed over the children of Israel, that a decree was issued throughout all Egypt, commanding the death of every male child born to the Hebrews. The cries of despair resounded in every home, as families mourned for sons who would never know the light of day. Yet amid despair, Jochebed's heart clung to hope. She nursed her son with tender love, naming him Moses, for she declared, "I drew him out of the water." Though the edict of Pharaoh sought to extinguish their lineage, she placed her faith in the unseen hand of Yahweh. And as time passed, hidden purposes began to unfold. The daughter of Pharaoh, moved by compassion, discovered the basket amongst the reeds. She lifted the child, and the infant's cries pierced her heart. "This is one of the Hebrews' children," she spoke, recognizing his lineage, and yet choosing to defy the king's command while embracing her destiny. The young princess named him Moses, for he would be the one to draw Israel from the clutches of bondage. Jochebed, who had laid her son in faith, was cunningly led by providence into the very palace that sought his death. Through her daughter Miriam's bravery, the child was returned to her, and she nourished him in the shadow of the very throne from which oppression flowed. As Moses grew, he became both a prince of Egypt and a son of the Hebrew people. Within him stirred the heart of a leader, a passion for justice burning fiercely. Yet the conflict between his two worlds weighed heavily upon his spirit. One day, witnessing an Egyptian oppressing a Hebrew, he could no longer contain the fury of his blood, and in a fit of righteous indignation he struck down the oppressor and buried him in the sand. But this act of anger invited scrutiny, for words spread quickly, reaching the ears of Pharaoh. Moses fled, forsaking the palace for the wilderness of Midian, where he encountered another hardship, loneliness and exile. The weight of his people's suffering pressed upon him like a heavy stone. Old dreams of deliverance fell silent in his heart. Yet even in the wilderness, amid the harshness of the desert, the voice of God was whispering. One day, as Moses tended the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, he beheld a bush ablaze, yet unconsumed. With startled curiosity, he turned aside to see this great sight, and there God spoke from the flames. "Moses, Moses," came the divine call. "I have seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry." Moses trembled before the holiness of God, knowing the weight of his past and the doubts that shrouded his heart. But the Lord assured him, "I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people out of Egypt." The promise of deliverance echoed from the heavens, igniting the hope that had long seemed extinguished. Moses replied with uncertainty, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" And God said, "I will be with you." In this divine encounter, a new chapter began to unfold, not just for Moses, but for an entire nation. Little did he know the magnitude of what lay ahead. The heart of God was set upon the liberation of his people. And through the lineage of Jacob, through the courage of a mother, through the burning bush, he was orchestrating the most remarkable rescue. For in every act of defiance, in every tear shed, in every prayer whispered in the night, God was at work, molding the destiny of a nation. What other divine mysteries awaited as the burdens of the oppressed grew heavier and the call for justice rose like incense to the throne of heaven? The stage was set for an exodus, and the sovereign plan of God was about to be revealed with unfathomable glory. And the Lord spoke again to Moses, saying, "You shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent you." The weight of this commission fell heavily upon him, yet in the depths of his spirit a flicker of faith ignited. Moses pondered the enormity of the task. How could he, a fugitive, speak to the heart of Pharaoh on behalf of his oppressed people? So Moses answered, "But behold, they will not believe me, nor listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord has not appeared to you.'" God, knowing the frailty of man's heart, offered him signs. He instructed Moses to cast his staff upon the ground, and it became a serpent. When he reached out to take it by the tail, it returned to his hand as a staff once more. "This shall be a sign to the children of Israel," the Lord declared, "that I am with you." Moses' heart trembled at the miraculous, yet doubts still clung to him. "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." Then the Lord replied with patience and authority, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall say." Still Moses hesitated. "Please send by the hand of whomever else you may send."
and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. Yet in his compassion he provided Aaron, his brother, as a voice, a partner for the mission ahead. As they assembled, Moses and Aaron found courage in their brotherhood.
Yet Pharaoh's heart remained resolute, bound by pride and the chains of his own making. Then God spoke to Moses, "I will send one last plague. It shall be the death of the firstborn, and by it I will bring you forth from Egypt." The people trembled at the weight of such a decree. Yet among the darkness a light of hope flickered with an urgent command. Each household must take a lamb, unblemished, and smite its blood upon the doorposts. For when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague shall befall you. In faith the Israelites obeyed. They ate the bread of affliction dressed for flight, ready to embrace their deliverance. The night arrived like a blanket of fear, but among the cries of the Egyptians came a peace that enveloped the children of Israel. For as the midnight hour drew near, God moved with might, and the wails of mourning echoed through the land. The cry for justice was answered. The firstborns fell, and Pharaoh, broken by grief, finally yielded. "Go," he cried out to Moses, "take your people and leave." With great haste, the Israelites gathered their possessions, laden with the treasures of Egypt, as the blessing of reparations washed over them. But a journey awaited that would test their faith. As they stood at the edge of the Red Sea, fear gripped their hearts, and despair clouded their vision. Behind them, the thundering chariots of Pharaoh roared, bringing dread once again. Yet, standing firm, Moses raised his staff before the sea and proclaimed, "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord." Then the Lord, in his infinite wisdom, commanded the waters to part as a pathway for his people. A miraculous escape unfolded, and the children of Israel stepped forward on dry ground, their hearts filled with praise and awe. They sang songs of deliverance as the waters crashed down upon Pharaoh's army. God's justice was manifest and his promises fulfilled. As they emerged into the wilderness, the people, once shackled, now danced in freedom. Each step upon the sands was accompanied by gratitude as the weight of oppression lifted. Moses, the chosen leader, held the commands of the Lord close, guiding them in righteousness and fostering faith among them. Days turned into weeks, and trials persisted in the desert, yet God's provision was ever present. Manna fell like dew from heaven, quenching their hunger, and water flowed from the rock, a testament to his sustaining grace amid uncertainty. And so the Lord called Moses to Mount Sinai, where he sought to establish covenant with his people. "You shall be my treasured possession," he declared, "a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." The 10 Commandments were etched in stone, a divine roadmap for living, rooted in love and obedience. Through Moses, the great stair of promise and covenant was pronounced, igniting renewed zeal amongst the people. They vowed, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." Their hearts committed anew, recognizing their rightful place within his plan. As shadows of fear dissipated in the light of divine guidance, the faith of a nation rose. Yet the journey toward the promised land would be fraught with challenges. The hearts of men would battle against doubt and disobedience. But God, in his steadfast love, reiterated his faithfulness. The clouds would lead them by day, and the fiery pillar would guard them by night. They remained ever mindful of the covenant his hand had established through their forefathers. Each step forward echoed with a reminder. Their God was with them, a faithful promise sealed by his blood and glory. What mighty faithfulness would they experience in Canaan's land? And yet, how would they navigate trials ahead? The legacy of Jacob and Joseph echoed in the hearts of these descendants, for their story was being etched not only in the chapters of history, but simply woven into the very fabric of their identity as God's chosen people. As the dawn of divine revelation approached, the hearts of the faithful surged with anticipation, knowing that beyond every storm lay the unfathomable grace of God's unwavering love. They were called to be His light among nations, a testimony of deliverance aligned with the heart of eternity. And my dear friends, as we reflect on this sacred narrative, let us take to heart the profound lessons revealed through the lives of Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and the children of Israel. In tumultuous times, cling to God's promises. In despair, seek His restoration. In fear, embrace His deliverance. For in every moment, He weaves a tapestry of hope and purpose. The story continues in us, for we are called to share His good news with the world in need. If this tale of redemption ignites your spirit, I urge you, subscribe immediately to stay connected to God's Word, for powerful stories and teachings await that will deepen your faith. Leave a like to help spread God's truth through this algorithm, touching more lives with His promises. Share your reflections in the comments. How has this journey impacted your walk with Christ? Don't wait even one more second. Share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear the truth of God's Word. There is a divine urgency to proclaim His love.